Good evening. Homelessness is still a really big problem in Glasgow, with many people being unable to afford decent housing. What can be done to make sure everyone has a safe, affordable place to live?
Thank you, Christina. Housing emergency declared here in 2023. 3,500 children currently in temporary accommodation. Willie Hawkey, you've got a plan to change housing in Glasgow. What is it?
Well, obviously what we're trying to do is to bring a complete new model to affordable housing. And you know, before we talk about housing, just to go back to the young lady's point here, what's happening at the moment is that people come onto these shows and they come on and say, let's tax the rich and take care of the poor, right? And it's easy to get a clap. The biggest problem that we've got in society at the moment is most of the people in this, it's the people in the middle band at the moment who are struggling for the first time in their lives. Right? There's people in here thinking about bills now they've never thought about in their life. There's only one way out of this before we talk about housing, and that is to grow the economy. It's to get better jobs, to get more money into the city so we can pay for the services, right, that we need. People are right, we're paying more and getting less. But going back to housing now, what I would say is that...
Because housing's the key to everything, isn't it?
100%.
To move here, on Paul's point.
People forget that before the dot-com boom, housing was a barometer to how the country was doing. I'm talking about the UK and in Scotland. So for me, we've been working for 4 years to try and find an answer to the affordable housing problem. And we totally believe that we have, you know, been in talks with the Scottish Government, which has been very, very good. You know,
you met Kate Forbes about this at the weekend.
And Shirley Ann Sullivan. I have to say, I was very encouraged that they do believe there is a crisis and they're working on it. And I was encouraged by that meeting. And we're hoping to work to do that. But what we're trying to do here is bring a solution for housing where it will bring people's cost in a month down from 50% of their income down to 25%. Living in nice houses, bringing people's energy down. And if, you've probably seen it in the BBC, it's been showed. And it's in Glasgow. The first house we've built is in Glasgow, behind our offices. But we are, you know, we're trying to deliver housing. We're trying to deliver housing where all the benefits that we create in housing, the benefit goes to the tenant.
Is that scalable, though?
100%. 100%. We're starting now looking at probably building another 1,800 over 3 or 4 sites, not all in Glasgow, but 100% that this model works. And I'll guarantee you that this will bring people's monthly cost down from 50% to 25% for the houses.
OK, this is a big issue for people in the audience. Man in the front row here.
He did mention something about building the economy, because most times for post-industrial cities like Glasgow and Manchester. So what I want to ask is, for people in the government, what are the plans for the young people to go into this kind of, to develop their skills? You know, to build an economy, like in a country like this, you need people actually doing things with their hands, people innovating, people developing new ways to do things, you know? Like in the US, most of the big tech companies is actually the richest, the most innovative companies are in the US and some in China. But in the UK, we don't see those numbers coming out. Okay. And it's the new millennium, the way things are going.
Glasgow actually does well for innovation, but I want to stick with housing just now, because we haven't answered that question yet. Man with the glasses and the grey top, yes.
What I don't understand about housing is we're throwing students' blocks up all over the city, we have been for years. How is it easy enough to build student blocks for students but not build houses? I walked up from Buchanan Street today and I counted 13 people out begging, and I saw 4 places where people were obviously sleeping in shop windows. We can throw up students' block, no bother, but we're not building houses, and I don't understand that.
Susan Aitken.
So we do face actually a homelessness emergency in Glasgow, which there's a whole number of complex reasons behind that. Housing supply is one of them. We actually have the most successful affordable house building programme in Glasgow in these islands. We build more homes for social rent, as we're the Glasgow City Council is the housing authority in partnership with community-led housing associations than any other local authority in the UK.
But what that man is seeing, Susan, is student housing being thrown up everywhere.
And you're absolutely right. For private developers, they find it easier to build student housing just now. They get the funding for that. I would argue student housing is also housing, and students also need somewhere to live. When we're talking about growing the city's population, and the city centre population is actually growing beyond our targets, one of the reasons why Glasgow's population is growing is because we've got one of the highest graduate retention rates in the UK. So young people come to Glasgow to study and they stay here. About half of them stay here. That's much higher than most other places. I think only Bristol's ahead of us. So it's important that we're building homes for everyone. But yeah, we have seen homelessness, people living in unsuitable or temporary accommodation, go up by about 1,000 over the past year, and that is a huge challenge.
Do you know why that is?
So the biggest driver of it, and our evidence shows us this, what you might call the kind of domestic population, people in temporary accommodation in our local population has actually gone down slightly. The biggest increase has been, and it's a fourfold increase in homelessness among refugees, because the previous UK government made a change to their approach to the way that they process asylum applications. So what happens is when someone gets a decision that they can stay in the United Kingdom, what then happens is actually they're made homeless. So it's a really poor system.
You've talked about putting a pause on the Home Office sending asylum seekers to Glasgow until you sort the situation out. Do you want to see that?
We're very reluctant to do that. We're the biggest asylum dispersal authority in the UK. We're really proud of that, of Glasgow's history. And I need to be very, very clear, it is not asylum seekers and refugees who are causing this problem. It is this change in policy which the previous government put in place, which the current government is continuing, and it's not funded. So we are spending actually tens of millions of pounds as the council to get people with roofs over their head. A couple of years ago, we'd reduced rough sleeping in Glasgow to single figures. Now, that we want it to be zero, but compared to other cities, I mean, it was actually an amazing achievement. We've seen it go back up into double figures again. It's round about between 20 and 30 on any evening in the city centre. And we want that to end. We want to get it right back down again to where we were. That's driven by a cost of living crisis. And we can't ignore the fact that homelessness is directly related to austerity, the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, there's a difference between homelessness and rough sleeping as
Indeed,
well.
yes, absolutely. And there's also a difference between begging and rough sleeping.
Yeah,
I think
I'll come back to lady in the front row.
Yeah, when I was coming up here tonight, looking at all the beautiful buildings that we have in Glasgow, an awful lot of them are lying empty. Yeah. There's a lot of them with the windows all smashed. And I just think all these buildings that are beautiful buildings, they're just lying there.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. Man in the back row, yes. On you go, sir.
I'm just looking for a flat at the moment in Glasgow, and there's massive competition to get a flat. And there's all these investment companies that have been set up to buy properties en masse, and you've got to try and compete as an owner-occupier. And I'm wondering if there's some way of a taxation disincentive so it makes it easier for owner-occupiers to get flats.
Paul Sweeney, what do you think?
Well, I think there's a really wicked problem because, like you say, housing pressure costs have gone up 70% in Glasgow in the last year when wages haven't obviously gone up by 70%. So it's really putting a lot of pressure on people in Glasgow. But it's a growth challenge. The city does need to expand. We need to recruit a lot more Glaswegians and make sure we've got the places for them to live. And actually, you made a perfect point. There's enough empty floor space in Glasgow city centre to put 9,000 flats in, already built. We just need to get the right tax incentives in place. So actually, weirdly, to renovate a building to insert flats attracts 20% VAT. To knock it down and build a new build, it's zero rated. There's also a problem with the business rates where if a building's empty, you're actually attracting rates. So there's a situation where the market for these old buildings is actually totally gummed up at the moment. So there's problems in strictures and problems getting planning applications through and permissions granted in a rapid enough way to get this housing mobilised. There's 2,000 empty houses in Glasgow right now. We've got 6,000 homeless people. I mean, you do the maths. So they can wipe out a third right away. I know it's simplistic, but it gives you an idea of the sort of big moves we could make. Meanwhile, we're spending millions and millions of pounds paying rents to these big contractors for asylum accommodation. And we even spent recently £500 million renting a cruise ship to sit at Braehead to house some of our Ukrainian refugees, you know, but I think could we have used that money better for a longer term, more resilient investment? Maybe we could have. It was obviously a short-term thing, but there's loads of big moves making Glasgow. There's 1,000 football pitches worth of derelict land. We can build out this city and get it back up towards 1 million people again. I think we need to move on that in a big way.
Okay, Annie Wells?
Yeah, I mean, go back to the gentleman's first point as well. Yeah, we are seeing loads of student accommodation. I mean, you can't drive anywhere without seeing it. And I get Susan's point, saying we do have a lot of students in the city, but we're saying half of them are then staying. So where are they getting the accommodation to stay after they leave student accommodation if they're planning to stay here after they graduate? And also as well, it's like, as you know, I've said it often, I live in the Springburn, but we had the Red Road Flats at the end of my street. They were bulldozed 10 years ago. We were told after 7 years it would be regenerated. It's a pile of rubble. There's nothing there. That was 4,000 homes that were demolished. And we look at Sight Hill just a wee bit further down. Again, thousands of homes. There's hardly been anything done there. There's hardly been anything built. There's been a school built, a church built, and a few homes that if you've got £300,000, on you go, you can go and buy one. But we've not got anywhere for the people who live in the community to go back to live there, who want to live beside their family. There's nothing there, but we've got all that land up there that we could build homes on, and it's been sitting there for 10 years.
Back to the audience. Man with the white sweater on the end. Yes.
So I think the way that we view housing has to fundamentally change. It's multifaceted. We know that since, you know, Right to Buy, nobody has built enough social and council housing. However, I also wonder, why do people need 2, 3 and 4 homes? Can't we cap the amount of homes that people can have? Why do you need somebody having 2 or 3 homes when they're only living in one and renting the rest of them out at exorbitant rates to people who are paying way over the odds, who can't get a mortgage, but actually if they could get a mortgage, it would be far less than the rent that they're paying? Perhaps we need to stop thinking about housing as a business and think about more of as a right for somewhere to live.
David Eustace, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I completely agree with what that gentleman just said. Now, just what that lady was saying there about, you know, the empty properties. I walked up here and I saw the same thing. Now, when I've listened to the panel tonight, I think there's one thing in common. We all want to find solutions. But at the moment, if you're on the streets and you're looking for a home or something, see the facts and figures, it means nothing. What they want is a roof over their head. What they want is some form of safety. What they want is an appreciation that they exist. Now, listen to Willie. Willie's the only one here who I've heard. It's not the politician, but he's the one that's given us an alternative. It's given us a solution. It's given us a pioneering mentality, and I think that's what we really need to embrace. And I think if we do have problems, what I do appreciate you guys are coming from, but if I'm reading this right, it seems to be there's so much red tape and box ticking and lack of decision making. Let him make the decisions.
Is there too much red tape, Willie?
Oh, 100%. But I'd just like to make a point on that, and just the point the gentleman's made. Susan has just said that we've got the most successful delivery of affordable homes, and yet we've declared the housing crisis. That doesn't make sense. No. Right? We've got homeless people and we've done magic, but they were off and now they're back, the numbers are up again. Here's Paul's point. Glasgow City should not have a housing crisis and we should not have a deficit. We've got the answers to this problem. Glasgow has a piece of paper from SEPA to say it's got 3,750 hectares of land before it builds in Greenbelt. The Glasgow Strathclyde Pension Fund's got £22 billion in it. We could have a programme tomorrow to get another 150,000 people into Glasgow in nice houses, solve this problem once for all, and by the way, 100% this is guaranteed. It's time we got on with it.
Yeah.